Good evening. I'm Commissioner Malloy. Welcome to the HC Committee of the Whole. We'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully this will be a fairly quick meeting for us all. Can I get first a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Simmons and a second by President Elliott. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we don't have any speakers scheduled this evening.
I know myself. Sorry, Commissioner Malloy, just to clarify, because there's two you said meeting agenda or minutes?
Tonight's agenda, I should say.
Okay, I just
That
wanted
was
to make
tonight's
sure I heard
agenda.
that right.
Yeah. All right, and then we do have two standing agenda items this evening. One is to review and accept the minutes from the September 19th HR Cow meeting. I inadvertently did not call for that motion at one of our prior meetings, and I think there was a lot happening that evening, so we made the motion for the meeting agenda, but not for the prior meeting minutes. So if I could get a motion to review and accept the meetings from the September 19th,
So moved.
2023 HR Cow meeting.
Second.
All right, thank you. So we have President Elliott with the motion, seconded by Commissioner Santiago. I'm getting used to saying this. Sorry, that's awesome. Rolls right off there. All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then if I could also get a motion to review and accept the minutes from our November 28th, 2023 meeting.
So move.
All right, so that's motioned by President Elliott and seconded by Commissioner Simmons. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, our first agenda item tonight is just to briefly discuss the purpose of the HC committee. If you can just pull that up on your screens. We have some tracked changes here, and I think that the reason why we're reviewing this is we already cover like number 2 and, well, the one that we've crossed out, number 2, review and approve newly created positions and related job descriptions. It's a bit redundant. We already do that in other commission or other meetings or our special meetings. So there's really no reason to have this as our purpose of the HC committee. I'm not sure how everyone feels about this, but if I could just get some feedback from all of you, that would be helpful. Would anyone like to offer some feedback? And I know we have some people online. Do we have any commissioners online currently? No. Not yet, okay.
It just seems a little sparse. And it may be okay, it just seems a little sparse and so reviewing diversity initiatives.
Develop policies related to personnel for consideration by the full board, review employee recruitment and retention strategies, and we're adding review professional development initiatives and strategies. I mean, if there are other suggestions to create more work for me, for instance, I would love that. I would love those suggestions. As you said, it is a bit sparse. So what can we do to make it a bit more robust? Anyone else want to comment? Commissioner
If you
Griffin.
could probably give us an insight of what the Human Capital Committee covers, you know, just so that the people out and alive can understand that as well. That would be probably helpful.
Okay. So typically, yeah, when we talk about human capital, it's the former HR committee, if that terminology might be more familiar for a lot of people, but just in keeping with what's being done across the country in a lot of HR departments, they're changing the name to human capital. Instead, that's what we did just a couple meetings ago. But typically in a human capital committee, we're looking at employment, right? All of our employees and anything related to our employees. And I'm gonna, go ahead, Commissioner Simmons.
Yeah, so actually this looks robust to me. I might be thinking about it differently because the 4 pillars that I see look like buckets. That's how I'm seeing them, as buckets. So when you're talking about reviewing diversity initiatives, I'm assessing that there would probably be multiple diversity initiatives. So seeing the schedule come out and what those initiatives are, the objectives of those initiatives are, I would expect to see those spelled out over time. And then, for example, number 3 is review employee recruitment and retention strategies. And what does that look like when we talk about recruitment and retention of employees of color, when we talk about very specific efforts that are being made? I think all of these buckets will grow. And again, if there's clear, concise objectives attached to them, and then we have presentations aligned with what that looks like, this list can actually be a lot more robust than it appears on the surface.
Fantastic, thank you. And then I don't know who
Yeah.
is next.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted, I know you didn't finish speaking, so I was just wanting to be clear on, so we have an understanding with the viewers and with us on the board, what human capital is, because the name has changed. People are used to human resources. So with that said, I know what it is, but that's why I wanted you to spell it out for others. With that being said, I do think it's a lot vague, pretty vague, and I think it needs to be more there. So that's my, and piggybacking off of what the President Elliott said.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking as the commissioner's talking is that if there's some description, right? Because this is the purpose of it, but what is the Human Capital Committee? What is it? So a description about what it is. And in there, personnel, human resources or whatever,
Yeah.
however that's developed.
Just to really spell
Yeah,
out
spell out,
specifically. Yeah,
to
and
give
this
the
is a new
information.
committee for me as well, so these objectives are
Yeah.
relatively new. And I think that's why we want to discuss it tonight, so that we
Yeah.
can come up with something concrete and coherent. It's not my committee, it's our committee.
Yeah.
Right.
And what do we want that to say? What do we want to describe for our community, so that people have that good understanding, like you were saying, of, what our purpose is. Commissioner Santiago, go ahead.
I'll say to start off, these are good pillars, good pillars to start off. I must agree with some of my other colleagues on a long time, at least creating a description under these pillars. But to start off with, these are good pillars to begin with.
Fantastic. So what I'm thinking is perhaps working with our board staff to draft a more descriptive, create more description within this draft. And then I can bring that back or have that sent out to the community or to my fellow board members for review. And perhaps at our next Human Capital Committee, we could approve that, or we could even approve it at a special meeting. But I want to make sure that everyone has a say and feedback on whatever draft, so we can have a more robust discussion then on what we come up with. So any other suggestions? Okay, I understand Vice President LeBron is on Zoom. Vice President LeBron, did you want to comment?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll make sure that the descriptions are sent out to
Monitor.
everyone. Oh, our state monitor has his hand up way down there. All right.
Sorry, thank you, Commissioner Malloy. I think that you also need to look at the number 4, because, there's the equity on student achievement that is more academic. So when you're talking about professional development, what kind of professional development you're going to be looking at in this committee?
Thank you so much for that suggestion. All right. Well, without further ado, I think we'll move on to the next agenda item. If everyone is okay, if there's consensus with, bringing this back to you in a different format with those considerations taken into. Oh, Commissioner Santiago, did you have another?
And I'll just say maybe possibly in the descriptions of these 4 points is also figuring out how do we wrap this back to our students. Whether that's in the description or even if we choose that as one of our pillars. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, and that's always a challenge, I think, too, for HC, to bring that background to maybe to the goals that we have set as a board at this point. How do we make it more student outcome focused, as you're saying? And that'll be a challenge, I think, but that wording, I'm sure we can get it right as a board and move forward from there. All right, well, thank you so much. We're going to move on to the next agenda item this evening, which is a report on nurturing excellence and staff retention. And we have Chief Miller from HC to report on this for us. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Commissioner Malloy, President Elliott, Vice President LeBron, Commissioners and Superintendent, and Independent Monitor Alisea. Tonight we're going to talk about largely staff retention. We are the Office of Human Capital, and the Office of Human Capital works to recruit, develop, support, retain the most effective, diverse staff. And so this evening, with our agenda, we're going to provide a very quick vacancy update, some updates and data on staff attrition and retention, and then a very brief update on substitute teacher fill rates from last year and through the start of this school year. In terms of our vacancies, as of January 16th, these next few slides should be familiar. And what you see here is that from the start of the school year, we have lost some positions in terms of positions becoming vacant, where we've had to move to hire substitutes and work to continue to engage in the recruitment effort. What this reflects that out of 5,800 staff, we have right now about 164 vacancies, which is about a 3% vacancy rate, which is quite typical in an organization our size. Certainly, we want all our positions filled, and that's what we work to do. But we've certainly been challenged by classroom vacancies. And on this next slide, what you see here is a breakout of the teaching positions by content area. And you see that we, as we have for the last several years, struggled mightily with special education vacancies. We have chosen to not fill teacher on special assignment positions in favor of either retaining people in classrooms, or when we're hiring new people from outside the district, also hiring for the purpose of them being in the classroom, because that's where our priority is, to ensure that we have fully certified staff in front of our students. On this next slide, this is something we update, and it looks and maybe feels different across the year, because there are different times in the year where there are more candidates available than others. And certainly as we get into the school year, people who are certified and fully certified are likely going to be hired. And so as we get into the month of January, we're going to be struggling to find certified applicants unless they graduated in December. And certainly we work through those issues. But you can see that within New York State and across the nation, that these critical and high shortage areas are pretty consistent across the United States, and certainly something that we have to continue to advocate for, both with our legislative agenda and with the workforce development work that we're doing as a school district, right? That's kind of the difference between human resources and human capital. And a human capital mentality or mindset, you're actually doing that strategic work to ensure your needs are met versus just the transactional work. And so we are doing that workforce development by growing and uplifting our own staff and helping them, supporting their education, ensuring that they get paid a bigger income, so that going to school, getting that education is more affordable because they're earning a higher income, and we're helping to support them largely with SUNY tuition rates on tuition reimbursement. And so that helps them cross that finish line. We're putting our arms to support people who are focused on that endeavor. So any questions on the vacancies?
Any questions for my colleagues so far? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yes, on slide 6, you've addressed this, right? Okay, I just want clarity. Are you saying no shortage in reading teachers, or how am I reading this? I just want to make sure I'm reading this accurately. So we have no shortages in reading teachers? Where we have what we need for our children as far as reading teachers? Can you explain that?
Sure. If we actually look at this slide, this reflects that we have one reading teacher vacancy. So that it's in part what our reality is, but if we were to look for individuals who've applied or who are available in our pool, like out in New York State, we know that there are going to be candidates in those areas. There isn't as much of a shortage, but in terms of like bilingual, ESL, SPED, math, science, Spanish, speech, we know that we're gonna struggle mightily to find fully certified candidates in those positions because they've been scooped up and the colleges aren't even producing them. So we're gonna struggle on that side of the chart versus the other side of the chart. We know that when we post a position, we're not only gonna have multiple candidates who are fully certified, but we'll have the opportunity really to choose experienced or people that have done that work already.
So my concern is that when I see critical and I see no shortage, my concern is that how important is it for us to get the reading teachers if we're looking at the critical shortage as being bilingual, ESOL, math, science, all of that versus the reading, which we know literacy is our primary focus. So I'm kind of confused by this, and I'm thinking, well, if they're looking at critical shortage, we need more teachers in this area, not in the no shortage. So if I was looking at this, that's the way I take it. So I would think that the importance is the no shortage in reading. So I want to make that clear.
Commissioner Griffin? Actually, I'm going to have the superintendent jump in to give an answer.
No, so I
Yeah.
think I understand where you're coming from, but if we posted a bilingual position today, or if we posted a reading teacher position today, just based on what national averages are, where they're putting out candidates, we know it's going to be harder to fill a bilingual teacher. It doesn't mean more important, less important. It's just for us, what we know is a more difficult job to fill based on the number of candidates that are available for those positions. It has nothing to do with level of importance, just our ability to fill.
So, and we might decide to hire more reading teachers. It's not a question of the value on that. It's more that if we want to hire more reading teachers, if I'm understanding correctly, we probably would be able to. So this is just telling us what's out there and available, and the hardest positions to fill and the most critical shortage across the nation would be under those areas in red.
Where are you
Whereas-
pulling your data? Where are you getting those numbers from?
Yeah, so the way that this is a national model for how you reflect shortages, right? So this is a way to speak about shortages, right? So this isn't something we invented. So when we look at our application pool, right, this is what we see.
I'm still asking, where did you pull the data from? What system, where did you pull this data from that you're getting this?
Let me just ask, what are you actually asking, Commissioner?
Yeah.
So we can get some clarity from what you're
He's saying that
asking.
I'm sorry, President, not to cut you off, I didn't mean to do that. But because I'm asking him where he's getting this from, he's saying that he pulled the data. So for what system, or where did you pull the data from? I guess that's what make me understand the clarity, because maybe I can look at it and see what you see. So I'm just trying to understand it.
Yes, it's from our applicant pool and our lived experience.
own
and-
experience,
And
yeah.
and the experience of
Oh,
other
data.
districts in
Okay.
the state.
All right, so it's just something that we put together? Yes.
But-
Oh,
but
okay, so
you
there's
would-
not a national pool.
Right.
This is just what you pulled together, it came up with these numbers, came up with this format, this heat map.
Records.
Okay, all right, so this could be kind of not accurate, but accurate based on what you two pulled together, right? Is that what
Based
you're
on
saying?
our information.
Okay,
Yep.
got it. Okay, so there's still work to do. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions so far in the presentation?
Yeah, I just
Okay,
have
Commissioner
one.
Simmons?
Dr. Miller, can you just let me know more about what your plans are for the CTE, which is, we know, very difficult to fill based on the trends and aging out and all of those things? Just a general understanding of what efforts are being made to fill the CTE positions, because we know that's something we're trying to have across schools at this time.
So right now, we only have one CTE vacancy. As I look at this data, we have a school instructor in the trades position that's available that we're working with. And so we partner with Sheldon Cox. He has recently asked and inquired about us partnering further for next year.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do that together and come up with a
Because
strategy.
that's what I'm thinking about, is the leadership foresight around the area. Although you have one now, when you look at the skilled trades, a lot of it is folks aging out and going into retirement, if you will, respectfully, and there's going to be more than one, much sooner than there will be later. So wanting to know what that plan looks like. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Elliott?
So my question is not on this slide per se, but in your processes in the HR department, because there has been some challenges within the systems within the department, because there have been, over the years that I've been here, there have been people who have applied and the process either takes too long or the system does not work. There's been some challenges with even, uploading an application. And then, there have been times when they said, well, it's filled or it's not uploaded, and there are people that know that the position is available. So can you talk a little bit about has there been efficiencies within your system? Because I think over the years that I've been here, there have been a number of people who've just been frustrated with our HR department that have gone other places. And then we have not known how to really capture those candidates for our district, but other districts get them. So I'll ask about that. And then I have another question, but I'll ask it at another time, because we tend to train people, then they leave us and go to other school districts. That's another whole piece as well. But if you can just speak to that, I know this is not on the, if that's okay, Commissioner Malloy. Because because we're talking about this, but if we don't get our systems in place, it's going to continue to be a challenge for us to fill these positions.
Yeah, and thank you for that question. So in July 2022, we created additional supports in the Office of Human Capital to ensure that things like you're mentioning weren't continuing. So we hired 3 recruiters. We, as a district, never had recruiters, so we hired 3 recruiters. And so every day, they are looking at who has applied in the last 24 hours, and then they're engaging with those candidates so that candidates aren't missed. What has happened in the past, what we've learned, is that some candidates, because of technology or otherwise, they start an application but do not finish it, and then they think they've applied but they really haven't. And so what we're looking at is on a cadence to look at people that have started an application but didn't finish it, and then reaching out to them so that we don't have any leaks in our pipe in terms of recruitment. So that's one of the things that we're doing. But having recruiters that can be really intentional about that and looking at all the applications that come in every single day helps us to farm them out and ensure that they get in the hands of people who need them.
Fantastic.
All right, thank
All right.
you.
President Elliott, any other questions?
I do, but I want to stay on topic.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, I appreciate that. I understand that Commissioner Patterson online has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Excuse my voice, I have a terrible cold. So here, hence the reason I have not been at the meeting. A question is relative to CTE and certification. Do we have these statistics of individuals that are certified or working on certifications for CTE? I know you said there was one, position open, but how many need to be certified or are not certified in CTE? And how many are working toward their certification? I think those numbers are important for the board to know.
Yeah, we can provide those data.
Okay, thank you for your
Thank you.
question. I'm sure that'll go on the question log.
Can I
and-
follow up on what Commissioner Patterson said?
Yeah, please do.
So, and Commissioner Patterson knows this, my concern is that, and I bring up the public safety program, where we had these retired law enforcement personnel who had worked, their entire careers in law enforcement. But then when they went through the evaluation process, they were evaluated as developing. And I think that many of them were offended by that because they knew their job. And then I think that may be how we lost them, because of that whole evaluation process. So to what Commissioner Patterson is suggesting, it just brought up that we had these experienced law enforcement personnel, public safety personnel. They didn't have the certification, but nobody could argue that they weren't qualified. So that was always, that's an issue there, Do you want to speak on that, Superintendent?
I agree. I think that's about support, right? You have you could have sometimes the greatest athletes play the greatest position, but they can't coach the team. Right? So it doesn't mean that it always translates, but there's a skill set there and you want to work and develop them to grow that skill set. So just because you're able to perform at that level doesn't mean that you're able to work with students, get them to learn the material, get them engaged in the material, right? And from there, that the teacher evaluation process shouldn't be punitive in nature. It should be a coaching in nature to kind of move you along the continuum to
Growth
go
model,
to
yeah.
highly effective.
They seem to be doing well in that particular program. I used to,
Yep,
that was
yep, yeah.
one that I championed, but I do get your point of what you're saying. But I
Yeah.
think that it was not conveyed correctly from former people who were in the position. I think it was a chief at that point. Can't think of his name. I can see his face. But Commissioner Patterson, I think I cut you off. I apologize.
Yeah, so both of you you and the superintendent are right. We felt as though, actually, I wasn't there. I had to leave, death of the family, but in speaking with the other instructors, and I had to go through that too, as a matter of fact, and challenge my performance evaluation because, excuse me, we didn't agree that we were developing. Even one step higher, would have been good for us. But when you're rating us as developing, when we have all this knowledge, and believe me, I believe in education. I believe in going to college and things like that, and getting our certifications that we need because it does help you grow as a teacher, even though we have that professional, knowledge. But to teach in a class, I do agree that we should have, and they should have been, went back to school and given an opportunity to obtain those certifications, and some did. But the main issue was the performance evaluations when we were rated as developing, when we had all this personal knowledge. And I think that, or I know that the administration should have made different regulations or whatever you want to call it, for us as professionals after serving more than 20 years in our trade. So that's what the main issue was. But I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner Patterson. Commissioner Santiago, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay. Did you want to add something else? Go ahead, Commissioner.
I just want to make sure I'm on track or on point with this. So I think I spoke to yesterday, we talked about it briefly, Dr. Peluso, is with the peer professionals that we have on staff and how we can probably catapult them into being certified teachers if they've worked a certain amount of years within the district. How can we help them become teachers? Because we have a lot of them out there that really want to be teachers, but we have that the time frame, to your point, being certified, and you have these loopholes. How do we help them become teachers, certified teachers with that? They've been in the job for a long time. They care. So how do we help them help them become the
One of
teachers?
the things that we did, Commissioner Malloy, I'm sorry.
I recognize you. Yes, yes.
Thank you. So one of the things that we did, because years back, what we saw is that we had the paraprofessionals
Right.
who were not getting paid, and they were on the front lines with the students.
Absolutely.
And the teachers were not doing the kind, I shouldn't say that,
Yeah.
but they were taking care of the behavioral issues.
Exactly.
Right? And they were right there on the front line, but they were getting paid $9 and some change.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so that's something that I fought on. And so as a compromise to that, what we did was the next level was the teacher assistants.
Right.
Right? And so in that teacher assistant capacity, you can go back to school. So they moved from being a paraprofessional to a teacher assistant.
Right.
And then they were able, and we have some now who've gone on from being a teacher assistant who's now a teacher in the district. So that's the pathway that we already have. And I'll let the superintendent continue.
I understand that. I'm just saying in accelerated fashion. So you know how we,
Okay.
well, I know, I mean, it may be something
Saying,
that we
you
can
see what I'm
look
saying?
at and
Yeah.
maybe, put up something together because we're missing out on a lot of good teachers' assistants that would love to become certified teachers, but the time to go to school and with that time frame, we have an accelerated program within teaching certification that that might change the shortage of teachers. I'm thinking.
You got to advocate that on the state.
But yeah, we know there's a lot of legalities.
Go ahead.
We know if we invest in, and Dr. Miller presented this data a couple of meetings ago, right? And we had some of our staff that we put on what we call teacher certification action plans. And if we help those teachers get and work towards their certification, we know they're invested in us and we're invested in them. And those are our best assets. We have accelerated program. We work with our teacher assistants to get them through there. We have some contractual language in there as well. We do have systems that we need to work with within state regulations in terms of what it is that you're able to get to certifications and then who could sponsor you to sit for that certificated exam. But those are things that we could talk about and look at from a legislative push as well.
And we have some great
'Cause
partnerships
it-
with local colleges and universities on
Because-
that front as well.
Because I think that we have a great pool of paraprofessionals to choose from, particularly the 75% of those paraprofessionals are African, but people of color. And then they're making $9 and some change to start. But you have teachers who are making what they make, and I just think that there's an imbalance there. The difference, however, is that they've gone on and got their degrees, what have you, and the paraprofessionals have not. But I've been advocating, maybe this board can help us out, to ensure when they come in that they're being paid more, so.
Fantastic.
I'm
Thank
done.
you.
Commissioner
Do we
Malloy.
have anyone online who'd like to comment? Vice President LeBron? I don't know if she wanted to add anything. I can't see hands either, so. All right.
think they're-
I think we can move on in the presentation if everyone's
done for the rest of the
amenable to that.
I have no questions, but thank you. And I will raise my hand if I do, and if
Okay.
you can't see it, I'll jump in. Thank
Okay,
you, Commissioner
thank-
Malloy.
Yeah, thank you, Vice President.
All right, super.
Go ahead, Chief Miller.
Super. So I'm gonna shift in the presentation then because we chunk it into different sections, and so we're gonna shift to talking about attrition and retention. If I can get the slide to advance. Next slide, please. Yeah. And next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a graphic you've seen before. I want to share a story. 20 years ago, I was a very young educator. I was a social studies teacher. And as we know, master's degrees are required for teachers. And I was in my master's program at St. John Fisher College, St. John Fisher University now. And we were at the end of that 18-month-long program. And I was in that program to become or get a degree in school administration. And at the end of the program, we were asked to talk about our identity and how our identity connects to students and how it connects to us as leaders. And so for me, talking about identity is something that isn't easy. And I broke down in front of my whole cohort of colleagues, most of them Rochester City School District leaders. Today, they're leaders. And the reality in 2003 of being a gay man and being a gay educator was something that I was incredibly fearful of because the support was not there, the fear was there. And in our country, you could lose your job in various states across our nation for being gay. Not in New York, but that fear was still very real for me. And I had a mentor in that program, one of the professors, the great Dr. Fran Murphy, who did a lot of work with the Rochester City School District. And he believed in me, he uplifted me, he spoke to me and helped me think about my confidence. And he told me something that's stuck with me ever since. He said, pioneers have to take some bruises. And he taught me in that moment that we all deserve someone who believes in us, that supports us, that grows us, and the ripple effect of support is incredibly powerful. It's what we were just talking about here, actually. And the narrative of that little snippet, I think, underscores that we have a need for mentoring, we have a need for coaching, We have a need for inclusive environments for our students. We have a need for inclusive environments for our staff. And we need to look at and believe in the potential of our students and our staff to overcome challenges and pioneer their own positive change. And it's who we need, and it's what we strive to find in our staff. And it's why I'm so thankful to do this work in the Rochester City School District, because pushing norms and challenging boundaries is what we must all do. And it's what I see the board doing and leading in a direction for our school district with our superintendent. So we must believe in our students and we must believe in our staff. And the reason that this is important, right? I'm one of the few people in the organization, in our office, that we get to talk about and really be thoughtful about our staff and the impact that staff has on students in this community. And quite literally, in the Office of Human Capital, we're working to care for our staff from the moment of recruitment through retirement. And that includes, you know, people that grew up, were born and raised and attended our schools and stay their life in the Rochester City School District. They start in pre-K, they work here an entire career, their parents might have worked here, and they stay with us. Next slide. One of the things that we need to do as an organization is really think about the psychological safety that we provide our students and our staff against the felt accountability.
Chief Miller, I'm
Yes.
so sorry to interrupt your presentation. It seems that we have a different PowerPoint. We don't have those slides on our
I think we just
PowerPoint.
inserted this one slide just to show you this
Okay,
graphic.
so that other graphic on the slide before and then this slide, I don't think we have that in ours. So there are two slides, but okay.
We'll
I was
send,
just
we'll
making
send
sure.
it. Sorry about
Thank you.
that.
No, it's fine.
So on this slide, what you see is psychological safety versus felt accountability. And when we look at our students and when we look at our staff, and when you think about your own work experience, leaders and teachers or SSOs or custodial or clerical, we all have the ability to have an impact on students. We all have an ability to have an impact on the staff that we lead and that we work with. And so as leaders in any organization, it's a fine line of finding that careful mix. And I'd ask you to think about your own supervisors that you've had and how well they did psychological safety and felt accountability. And when we have all felt accountability and no psychological safety, we're going to end up in a place of apathy or anxiety. When we have all psychological safety with very little felt accountability, we're going to have a comfort zone or an apathy zone, right? And so as educators, as leaders, and everybody in this room is a leader, we need to be pushing into that learning zone where it's a careful mix of psychological safety and felt accountability. Leadership, in a lot of ways, I would say, this describes leadership. And it's constant work. Constant work if you're a classroom teacher, to be thinking about every individual student, what their needs are, and how you're going to cater to ensure that they feel safe, that they feel a sense of belonging, and that they are challenged appropriately so that they can grow. And that's what we are trying to do as an organization as we think about the work in the Office of Human Capital. Next slide, please. So everything we do on the recruitment retention side, everything we do as a school district, every decision we make, every project we roll out can have an impact on recruitment and retention. And everything we do is going to attract people or it's going to push people away. And so we always have to be thinking about that. As leaders in an organization, we want to think about how we're doing that with the staff we lead, that we supervise, and it's a mindset. I've presented consistently where we've talked about how we ensure change is through levers, processes, and mindsets. And one of the things I think we need to do as an organization is work on those mindsets, that we are a growing culture, that we're going to support people, because the ripple effects of support do just that. So when we look at the next slide, please, when you look at this slide, you see some data. These are national data that show some similar trend lines to what we see and hear quantitatively and qualitatively from our staff. When staff exit They either complete electronic exit forms, or we do in-person interviews to cull information about why they're leaving. People don't always share or want to share, but what we see is similar to what you see on this slide. And that's important for us to keep in mind, because our strategies and our work to ensure that we retain our staff has to connect to what we see here. Next slide, please. Put a different way, here are some additional ways to summarize educator retention concerns. Burnout is a serious problem. Many educators consider leaving the profession. Many educators, since COVID, or maybe even before, have had to take on additional responsibilities that make their work harder. The shortages that we see, the shortages that we just talked about. A large percentage of educators are identifying student behavior concerns, and only 10% of educators would recommend the teaching profession to a young adult. These are stark realities that we have to change as a nation. This is what educators want. They want to work for an effective principal. We all want to work for a good leader. Educators want to work on a team. More importantly, they want to be part of a positive, safe, affirming school culture. They want opportunities to learn and grow, and kind of what was that discussion about evaluation for CTE teachers, they want time to become effective. We can't expect that the minute our staff walks in the door, they're going to be completely baked and effective. We have to work with them, we have to grow them, we have to support them, and we shouldn't be beating them over the head, right? We should be supporting their growth. It's all about psychological safety and felt accountability and the appropriate lever for the individual that's being worked with. More than that, educators want to be cared for, valued, and respected. So the next several slides are going to provide an update on our retention data. And so this slide just talks about the definitions that we're going to be looking at some data for 5 years in a row from 2018 to 2023. Attrition is defined as any departure of an employee from our organization, whether voluntary or involuntary, and then all of the contract units are spelled out, as well as Black, Indigenous, people of color. So when we look at all of our staff over the past 5 years, here are the attrition numbers and percent. We were super interested to see what would happen with COVID and what would happen post-COVID. And certainly these data are a little bit complicated because in several of the years, in a big way, in 2019-20 and 2020-2021, we had big numbers of layoffs, right? And layoffs on their own have an impact, right? When people have that fear or that worry, right? That safety, right? That psychological safety begins to wonder, can I stay here? Will I have a position? Do I need to look, right? So we see that we did have a slight increase from the previous year. In terms of the Rochester Teachers Association and our teachers, you see the data reflected here, and you see a similar slight increase. On the next slide, the story that connects to the shortages that we see, the resignations that we experience, and we can see how we consistently are losing similar numbers of teachers by content area. And so how we strategize around that, how we work with our leaders to think about and find ways to improve, this is something that we can be more intentional about. Another concern or question that we've looked at and that we are reviewing data on is this concept of last in, first out, also known as LIFO. And this is the idea that because we're putting so much effort and energy and working on developing additional strategies to recruit BIPOC staff, they're the last hired. When we get to layoff, they may be the first to go because they were last hired. So that's been a concern that we've been monitoring. And you can see over the last 5 years what that has looked like in terms of layoff and what percentage of the layoffs were actually BIPOC staff. And this is in the Teachers Association. In terms of our administrators and our leadership, we had a slight uptick here of improvement, but certainly something that we're continuing to review. Bente also had an increase. You'll notice that there were significantly higher numbers of resignations in the past year compared to other years. And in RAP, again, an increase. Some of these increases in percentages, I would suggest, are as a result of our struggles to fill positions, that we're hiring individuals, we're taking risks on people, and the fit ultimately hasn't been there, and they're choosing to leave us. And part of that is also connected to our lower paying jobs. Lower paying jobs are highly mobile right now in our economy. People take a job and then they leave to take another job with a higher rate of pay. The fluidity in the workforce at the entry level is pretty significant. And that's what we're seeing in some of the Bente positions and in RAP positions, because they are entry level positions. So what do our educators say? Well, these are just some of the things that they say about why they stay, right? Not everyone is looking to leave. People are very committed to our district. They're very committed to this community. They're very committed to our students. And when we ask them why they stay, because we do stay interviews with staff, because we want to ensure that we can keep our staff, this is what they tell us, right? Things like their ability to have an impact, that their leaders are intentionally building relationships with them to keep them motivated, to keep them safe, to keep them inspired, and to challenge them in the appropriate way, to grow, and they're having an impact. They see their staff as human beings, and they respect life-work balances. They have staff team building, staff get-togethers, and they have intentional efforts to build community at the workplace, with the team, with the school, with the department. And staff lead are involved in professional development. They are provided mentors. That's why they stay. They have opportunities to climb and grow. And they have some autonomy in how they make decisions. And so these are some of the things that if we focus more of our attention on, by all the people in positions of leadership, and there's a mindset shift relative to thinking about psychological safety and felt accountability, we're going to be better in the direction of where we need to go. Because I'm sure, and when I asked you to think about previous supervisors you've probably had folks that were working on that, right? It's constant work to be thinking about the people that are in our classrooms or in our schools or in our departments and what they need, when they need it, and how we do that. We have other things that are very intentional that we're doing. One of the things I left at the dais, we have an employee assistance program. One of the things we're hearing is that staff in all fields need additional mental health supports, and that they need support. More than just the mindset, right, that leaders have, but how we offer a benefit to our employees to help them with mental health services. And so on the flip side of that, we have an employee assistance program that is free to our staff, and they can access coaching and counseling services, legal and financial counseling, health advocacy, life-work balance supports, company discounts or discounts from all sorts of people in our community and elsewhere. And it's like a concierge service that is meant to help our staff with what they need. We've had people contact EAP and get support in planning their child's graduation party, right? They provide information, they'll do the legwork for you and give it back to you. That's just one example of lightening the load of our staff in a way that can help them to manage life and work in a different way. But we also know that people might need or want to access counseling for themselves or for their spouse or their children. And so anybody that lives in their household also has the ability to access this service for free. So that's one of the things we've had. And what we've done is these cards were distributed this week to all of our schools and departments, a stack of them, so that anytime a leader is meeting with a staff person who maybe is struggling or presenting signs of struggle, that there can be a conversation with that employee about what is available to them. So that's just one strategy, and it's a simple strategy when employed well, but how we look at our people and how we grow them and develop them, that is going to be the most significant thing we can do, and how we create safe, nurturing, vibrant environments for our staff to work in, who in turn have that ripple effect that spreads to students. Because when we care for, value, and respect our staff, they're going to in turn better care for, value, respect our students. So with that, I'm just going to briefly shift to substitute teacher fill rates. And as you look at this slide, you'll see we weren't tracking data well in this area, so that's why it doesn't go back the 5 years as the attrition data. But we have work to do. We are struggling to find substitutes because they're being hired to be teachers in other positions in school districts across our nation. And we've increased compensation. We have had some good successes in the last month and a half because we've been targeting PODER and WDKX. We've negotiated new agreements with the union that represents PDSU, is the union that's a subsidiary of the RTA. We're working to do that. We ran ads in city newspaper recently. So we're trying to capture as many people as we can through different means to support them in becoming substitute teachers. But there are some impacts that affect shortages with substitute teachers, and teacher shortages have an impact. Compensation has an impact, so we've worked to address that. There is a limited pool of substitutes. The more consistent a schedule substitutes can have, the better, but sometimes that's not possible, and so that can be a detractor for some people. COVID has had an impact on our substitute pools. Student behaviors in an unpredictable work environment has also been a challenge for us. So we need to develop, and that's going to be a next step for us, is to have a more broad conversation with others who have ideas about what we could do differently with substitutes. But some of the key strategies that other districts are doing and that which we are trying are listed on this slide. What we can do at the school level is critically important, and many of our schools have done and installed many efforts to ensure onboarding packets, information, greeters, welcome, partnership with substitutes so that they feel welcome, connected, and want to be where they are in the service of students. So all of those things kind of connect together in terms of what we want to achieve and what we want to do to care for staff so that we can recruit and retain staff. And so I'll use this as a plug that we are hiring substitutes. And so this is just an example of the advertisement that was in city newspaper across from the crossword puzzle, as well as what we would have communicated on WDKX and PODER. But you can see the rates, right? And they go up with the more time you serve in our schools. So we are hiring. We start at $140 a day, and you can earn up to $255 a day if you stay in the work. So with that, I open up to questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. And before I'll just say a few words before I open up to my colleagues. First and foremost, I want to say thank you, Dr. Miller, for how personally you related to everything that's being talked about tonight. I really respect your authenticity as a leader, and I really respected this entire presentation and the thoughtfulness that clearly went into it. It was very powerful for me to hear your story and to connect to that. I actually didn't know that you were a social studies teacher, so hey, got something in common there. But thank you so much for reporting just on the social emotional needs of our employees. Social emotional is everything for our students, but if you don't have healthy employees who are feeling supported, that's not going to ripple down or trickle down to students. And so I always like to quote the late Rita Pearson, who said, "Kids don't learn from people they don't like." And that doesn't happen when you're not in a healthy state as a teacher. You can't relate to your students well. So thank you so much for your presentation and on the social emotional connections. You know, that psychological safety and felt accountability. Thank you for those slides. Look forward to getting those just as part of the presentation. The question I have is just when you were getting into some of the numbers for like attrition, how do our numbers compare to national averages? And I don't know if that's something that could be answered tonight or if we could put it on the question log for future reference. But I would like to see how we stack up at the national level. And then the final comment I'll make is just, per diem substitute teaching is a challenge. And I remember doing that before getting a full-time gig or job. And so it's nice to see that we are making that compensation. It's a lot more than what I used to earn years ago. I think it was like 75 a day, way back when, 20 years ago or so. But it's really tough as well, not just for subs who are coming in. We want to make sure we're compensating them appropriately, but it's also really tough right now for our building, at the building level, to cover absences, et cetera, and the number of our employees who step up to cover other people's classes, because there is a shortage, right? It is hard to cover those things, and the scramble that goes into a lot of our buildings at the last moment to try to cover, sometimes 10 to 15 absences. And so it's a challenge, and so thank you for reporting on that. I don't know, how do we stack up nationally? Is that a number that you could speak to?
Yeah, it's gotten dire since COVID, but 14 to 20%. And
Okay.
so when we look at our teachers, we're at 9.1%. We have work to do. It's hard to get data, actually. What I would say is we've had an effort to be transparent. And not every district is transparent about publishing these data or sharing these data. So it is hard to come across and find data, but the networks that I'm in with other chiefs of HR across the nation and our largest school districts, it's 14 to 20%.
Okay, and then could you compare maybe to suburban communities that surround us?
I'd have to get back to you on
Okay,
that one.
all right, thank you so much. I'd like to open it up to my colleagues. I'm going to start at the other end of the dais this time. Commissioner Santiago.
I'd just like to say, I actually had an onboarding meeting this morning with the HC staff, so all of my questions have already been answered. I shot out, I believe, about 10 questions, and they were able to answer each one. So most of my questions have already been answered, but just shout out to the HC team for the amazing work you guys are doing. It is great to see the mental health benefits. I ditto to what Commissioner Malloy said. So good work.
Thank you, Commissioner Santiago. President Elliott.
I don't have a whole lot, but what I would also say is that if there's some way we can get the church involved in this in terms of people needing to have, someone, a pastor, or someone to speak to. I don't know how that aligns here, but I've never been one to separate my relationship with Jesus Christ from anything that I do. So I'm just hoping that in addition to mental health psychological services, that there's a spiritual component that's a separate from even yoga or meditation. We tend to put those things in, but when it comes to someone like Jesus Christ, we don't talk about my Lord and Savior as much, and he's the one that has the answers. And so, for the spiritual component, if we can also offer that in some kind of way. I don't know how you do that, but I know it works for me. Let me just tell you. And so it works 100%. So, just consider that as well as we're offering these other offerings to our employees.
Thank you so much, President Elliott. Commissioner Simmons.
Yes, can you tell me how you partner with other departments here in the city school district around employee themes when we talk about psychological safety? Or do they truly feel safe sharing their concerns with our HR department? Sometimes HR is, people don't see it as a human resource. It can become a scary space, but how in-depth are we getting a true psychologically safe environment for our employees? And again, how are we partnering with other departments to look at themes that we're identifying and working together to support employees?
Yeah, so let me just make sure I'm clear that our EAP program is run by outside external folks. So it's if people use that, no information is exchanged back to the district. So that's one thing I just want to share and clarify, because I wasn't clear about that earlier. But the second is we have work to do in this area. And so this concept, I introduced it today to Commissioner Santiago, and I felt it was so important to make sure that I shared it here. And I was really intentional about saying it multiple times, psychological safety versus felt accountability, because it is the secret sauce and it's a mindset, right? That not everyone I'm not talking about our district alone, but not everybody in a position of leader or power has a mindset that both those things are important.
Trust me, I know. Trust me, I do. Boy, do I know. And, you know, that, I was actually attracted to that part of the presentation. I actually wrote that down. I talk a lot about psychological safety in spaces that I go into, and, you know, they promote it, but they don't know what it really looks like. And I love the balance of the accountability that comes with it and what that can really look like. I'm familiar with EAP and how it works, but I'm more, I think what I'm getting at more so are the employee conditions. Right, and so that it doesn't even have to identify the individual employee that's expressing something, but again, there's themes that might be, hey, I'm getting a lot of kids in my classroom that are not reading, and I'm feeling anxiety as a result. They may need EAP for one part of that, but the fact that there's some conditions that we have responsibility to support, how are you partnering with other departments to address those conditions?
I think we have, like, if I could plant a flag, like, this is the work today forward, right? So there is partnership in terms of what we do to guide, support, coach. We have 3 directors of staff relations that are on the phone every day with principals, supporting their leadership, giving them support to do the work that they're doing. Our employee benefits department is doing that work all day long, but it is not fully encompassing, challenging, or getting folks to think about mindset and then develop a plan for their team, their department, their school, the people they supervise. So those buckets, that has to happen. And I'm going to plant a flag that has to happen,
All
because
right, you're on
that's the
record.
secret.
Okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner Simmons. Commissioner Griffin.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of things relative to the student behaviors. When I go back to slide 14, I look at the downsize of, I shouldn't say downsize, how the reading teachers decreased from 2018 to 2019, and then on 2021 to 2022, we have no reading teachers listed at all. I question how we advocated in the 2021, 2022 for reading teachers and why it actually fell off, and what numbers would represent how it affected our children and the graduation rates in Rochester when we stopped teaching them reading. With that being said, if we scroll down to slide 21, we have number 7 noted as student behaviors. Well, I'm a firm believer that empowerment from our children comes from literacy and being able to read and understand the dynamics of reading, phonics, and what have you. So we also look at that student behavior and the lack thereof of literacy and the family dynamics and how that has impacted them from the lack of reading and empowering our youth. So I think, and also poverty. We also want to look at poverty and homelessness. This all affects the student behaviors that then turn into a mental disadvantage for our children. So it's not even a question. It's just basically me stating something that I believe that is factual and has impacted our children. And as we see from those years prior, 2018 to present, the decline in graduation and the uptick in crime for our children because the lack thereof and the empowerment of reading or literacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Griffin. I'm going to go up onto the Zoom screen. Commissioner Patterson.
Yeah, no questions. Just thank you for your transparency and a good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't know, Vice President LeBron, if you're available. I know there's something going on right now, so your hand is not raised. Okay, fantastic. All right, with that being said, is there anything else, Dr. Miller, that you wanted to discuss with us this evening?
No, I just want to thank the board for having time for this work. It's unusual, but it puts attention on these issues and the data and the transparency that we're trying to provide, because that's how we make a shift.
But I do have a bone to pick with Dr. Miller.
Uh-oh.
So how somebody, I ain't gonna call no names, get a chance to do some recruiting and I don't? And you click on a time when I cannot go? Come on now, you know that ain't right. I thought we was like this.
I wanted you to go. Can I share what we're doing?
Yeah, please.
Sure, please.
So
Commissioner Malloy, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
we are going to the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association basketball tournament.
What?
So it's,
See?
but we're not going to watch basketball, although I think the people that go are going to get invited to a game, because we're going there to recruit, because this is just brilliant, right? A big basketball tournament that draws in lots of people has a component to it, or a day, that's for teacher recruitment and for career recruitment. And so we are able, right? One of the things about these events is they limit how many people you can bring, right? So some events, they say you can bring one person. Or you can bring
HR
two.
chair, I think I should be invited, for
So,
sure.
so we have 3 people going from the district to represent and to ensure that we are able to have a presence and to recruit. And so we are finding and looking at other types of events like that. Last week, I'll just share one more thing. We polled all of our staff. Y'all should have received it as well, because the first step, right, is to find out where all our staff graduated. And so we sent out a poll. Did you graduate from Hispanic Serving Institution, an HBCU, a tribal college or university? And we provided them that list. But we want everybody's data. We don't have data on where people graduated, but let's get yours. And if you're interested in becoming a trained recruitment ambassador for us, we want to work with you. And so we've had a tremendous response from people that have, they want to put their foot forward. And so we're going to begin training recruitment ambassadors next month. So we're working on that plan, and we're working on a calendar and doing all those things to ensure that presence and that success. So thank you.
Well, looking forward to hearing how that goes, and
Yeah, listen, before we can be right like this again.
Well, you're going to be in Albany, right?
I will be.
I do have a question.
go ahead,
So
Commissioner
as we're
Santiago.
speaking about bringing teachers to Rochester to teach in our district from around the country and even outside of the country, what is our partnership? Do we have any initiatives to provide incentives to really, as an encourager, to bring teachers here, whether it's with collaboration of the city or even within ourselves? Like, are there any initiatives or incentives that we have planned for people who may be coming here from a different state or a different country?
Thank you for that question. I think one of the things we want to ensure we're successful at is that this is a community effort, not just a Rochester City School District effort. And so we want to ensure that if we're going to recruit and bring people or encourage people to come to Rochester from elsewhere, that we've got to have a whole community support to put our hands around folks, thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to support people when they come. And so we've started a conversation in partnership with the RAISE Committee, and we're going to expand that to other entities within our community to ensure that we can get other minds and partners in this work to help us think through this problem, so that it's a community effort and not just an effort of the school district. So stay tuned.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And finally, I just wanted to defer quickly to our state monitor, if there are any final comments that you wanted to make on tonight's presentation.
Just a great presentation, no comments, nicely done. So.
Thank you. All right then. Well, without further ado, if there's nothing else to discuss, can I get a motion to adjourn? Oh yeah, don't forget to complete our surveys, folks. So that motion came from Commissioner Simmons, seconded by Commissioner Santiago. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everyone. Thank
I
you.
don't even see the